Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. We recently did a video about Mace Windu and his relationship with Anakin Skywalker that from the very beginning started off on the wrong foot, or arm. Mace Windu is what you would call a one-armed traditionalist Jedi. His suspicion and ultimately rejection of Anakin represented the mainstream Jedi ideology at the time, which was rigid, dogmatic, fearful, cold, cut off from reality, and amputated from the truth. And so when the Jedi Order looked at Anakin Skywalker, instead of seeing a young boy and former slave who had just been taken away from his only home and mother, the Jedi instead saw a boy who was too old and weathered by the world and too attached to his mother, both flagrant violations of their flawed Jedi code, created by their flawed perception of the Force. Now, the Master who had bought Anakin before the Council, Qui Gon Jinn, did not care whether the Order would accept him or not. No matter what their decision was, the Jedi Master had decided that he would train the young boy himself anyway. Qui Gon Jinn was an unorthodox member of the Jedi Order, and he really did believe that Anakin was the chosen one from the Chosen One Jedi prophecy. Now, I believe had he not been killed by Darth Maul, Qui Gon Jinn not only would have trained Anakin Skywalker, he most likely would have started his own separate Jedi Order away from the traditional one. Qui Gon Jinn had always been a very special Jedi. He was an independent-minded individual who also had an extremely strong sense of right and wrong, and at the same time an extremely strong curiosity about the Force. This strong moral compass kept Qui Gon Jinn grounded while dabbling in things which might have brought lesser Jedi to the dark side. While the rigid rules of the Jedi Order were designed specifically to prevent individuals from falling to the dark side, there have been remarkable individuals in the course of Jedi history who have a very strong moral compass and were able to partake in dark side activities without being tainted themselves. Mace Windu, ironically, was one of those individuals. His creation and mastery of Form 7 lightsaber combat meant that he could channel the dark side energy within himself in the middle of a duel but not lose control. Grandmaster Yoda also famously disobeyed the very rules the Council set forth for its members because he too had a firm sense of who he was and what was right and wrong. Now, Qui Gon Jinn's interest as a Jedi fell into two categories. One was Jedi Force prophecies, and the other one was kind of completing his understanding of the Force. He had been introduced to Force prophecies by his own master, Count Dooku, who of course became quite a controversial figure after leaving the Order. The Jedi generally viewed prophecies as dangerous entities that could generate fear and self-fulfilling prophetic visions that ultimately led people to the dark side, as seen in the Padawan massacres during the Old Republic era. The Jedi also frowned on Qui Gon Jinn's second interest, which was to understand the Force at a very intimate level. Now, generally, the Sith were the ones who questioned the Force and tried to figure out how it worked. You had scientific minds like Darth Plagueis, who literally figured out how the midichlorians contacted the Force and was able to basically bend them to their will to create life itself. The Jedi, on the other hand, were very unscientific when it came to the Force. They didn't really want to know or figure out how it works because they knew there was the temptation of trying to control the Force, which they obviously thought of as a dark side activity. Now, Qui Gon Jinn's strong moral compass gave him great confidence in his own relationship with the Force, so much so that he often trusted his own intuition far more than the opinions of the Jedi Order. Which of course means that he was constantly clashing with the High Jedi Council, especially in his earlier years. By the end of the Golden Age of the Republic, Grandmaster Yoda perhaps sensed that his High Jedi Council had become an insulated group that lacked a diversity in thought and solutions. And so reluctantly, he actually invited one of the most unorthodox members of the Jedi Order to be a part of the Council, Qui Gon Jinn. At the time, the Jedi Council was struggling to find its own identity and stagnating as the galaxy around them seemed to be falling into chaos, especially in the Outer Rim. A general haze seemed to be surrounding the Jedi Order's connection to the Force, most likely a side effect of Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious's meddling with the Force. And so this offer to Qui Gon Jinn was a legitimate attempt by the Jedi Order to create some reform and open itself up to new ideas and ways of operating. Unfortunately for the Jedi, Qui Gon Jinn by this point had already decided to surrender himself fully to the Force and allow it to guide him towards a better understanding. And so he refuses to join the High Council as one of its members. Qui Gon Jinn was against his Jedi peers or wanted to destroy this order. He himself was unsure of the future, but he knew it was a path that he must take by himself and outside of the rigid hierarchy and structure of the Jedi Order. Now, somewhere along the way in his journey, Qui Gon Jinn stumbled upon a planet from which the midichlorians originated from. This world was extremely well connected to the cosmic force, and on that planet, Qui Gon Jinn would encounter individuals known as the Force Priestesses. These shamans had such a complete understanding of the Force that they knew how to preserve one's consciousness even after they died. They looked at Qui Gon Jinn and deemed that he was selfless enough to actually begin the process of learning how to do this himself. Qui Gon Jinn naturally never divulged the secret of becoming one of the Force to the Jedi Council because he feared what their reaction would be. Claims of immortality were usually frowned upon as a dark side trick and also seen as impossible. And so, after Qui Gon Jinn survives his encounter with Darth Maul or even defeats him, what happens? Well, Qui Gon Jinn wouldn't return to the Jedi Order at this point. He would begin focusing on the training of Anakin Skywalker with his new understanding of the Force. The Jedi Order had a pretty rigid set of standards for not only recruitment but also how Jedi younglings behaved. They had a structured life that involved training, lectures, and testing. This was a very mass-produced sort of education, not all that different from what we see in public schools today. This type of structures would ultimately fail Jedi like Anakin Skywalker, and in some ways also Qui-Gon Jinn and even Count Dooku, if you understand his story. You see, what works for student A will very likely not work for student B, and it definitely won't work for student C. The idea with mass-produced education is to find a system that will assure the largest percentage of students will benefit. It's just a cold calculation between costs and benefits. A troubled child like Anakin would require more attention, so he would greatly benefit from Qui-Gon Jinn's one-on-one. But at the same time, as he continues to teach Anakin, probably more individuals will hear about Qui-Gon Jinn and his supposed new method of teaching the Force. It's very likely that many Jedi will approach Qui-Gon Jinn in order to learn his secrets of immortality. But of course, the type of individuals who actively are pursuing immortality are probably not the individuals who have the right mindsets and ego to actually achieve it. It definitely involves a sort of enlightenment that stems from letting go of one's attachment to the physical world around them and completely getting rid of any selfish mentality. Now let's take a look at two Jedi who achieved unity with the Force, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Yoda. For one, both individuals are isolated on very sparsely populated worlds. Yoda lives in a swamp on Dagobah, and Obi-Wan Kenobi lives in a small hut in the middle of the desert on Tatooine. And it makes sense that they would do this because I've always said that the Jedi Code is extremely hard to follow, especially because the Jedi actively involve themselves in the politics of the galaxy and are policing normal individuals who are just running around doing stuff. And especially became hard for the Jedi Order to follow the Jedi Code when they eventually became soldiers in the Grand Army of the Republic. I've always made the joke that the only way the Jedi could truly follow their code is become monks and hide away in mountains so that they can focus internally and not be distracted by things. It's only after they figure out, all that internal stuff, work on their ego, their selflessness, can they actually go back into normal society and use their perceived moral high ground to judge and police the population. The reality is that most Jedi, at least the Jedi in the order that we see, were human or alien beings who were very much flawed and imperfect. And most were not really prepared to take on the huge responsibilities given to them. And so I believe that Qui-Gon Jinn's new order would take a form very similar to a lot of these Eastern spiritual kind of practices where they're basically isolating themselves from the rest of society so that they can focus internally and develop a better sense of self. Qui-Gon Jinn would teach Anakin and anyone else who joined them how to become one with the Force. The whole focus of Qui-Gon Jinn's teachings would be about the self and the ego and understanding your place in the wider cosmic force and universe. So there actually wouldn't need to be a lot of rigid rules and hierarchy like you see in the larger Jedi Order. The idea would be to cultivate individuals who are capable of making good judgments on a case-by-case scenario because they have improved their own understanding of the world around them. This would be a complete 180 from the Jedi Order's very heavy-handed training and restrictions. It'd be much easier for individuals like Anakin Skywalker to feel comfortable and find balance. Anakin clearly was a person driven by emotions, and especially love, and he was rejected and chastised by the Jedi for it. The Jedi ban relationships and love, and they don't really give much of an explanation for it. It's a very natural feeling for most sentient beings in the galaxy, so I guess they just want people to repress it. But in Anakin's case, instead of repressing it, he just goes behind the backs of the Jedi Order and pursues his own emotions. And so when he finds that Padme might die because of the Jedi prophecy he had, there's no one he can really talk to about his problems. A teacher's role is not to restrict or protect the student from dangerous and frightening things, it's to prepare them for those situations so that when they face them, they'll be more grounded and understand the right path. And every individual has their own separate path in life, and a lot of that is based on the base character stats you're born with. So it makes sense for Qui Gon Jinn to allow the individual Jedi that comes to his order to figure their own way to becoming one with the Force. Belief systems like the ones created by the Jedi Order or any religious group always seems to run into problems when powerful individuals begin using their own interpretations and experiences as a basis for orthodoxy. A personal orthodoxy that works for them that they then try to push onto the masses. Qui Gon Jinn's approach to the Force understands that a journey to becoming one with the Force is personal and different for each individual. I think Qui Gon Jinn was supposed to be the future of the Force. Unfortunately, Darth Maul did kill him, but had he survived, I think when the Clone Wars happened, a lot of Jedi would eventually leave the Grand Army of the Republic because they would be sick of fighting in the war and join Qui Gon Jinn's more peaceful and monastic order. Well, guys, let me know in the comment section below what you think about my interpretations of Qui Gon Jinn. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.